The gates of Chief Obinna's mansion opened wide to a world of gold and marble, a palace in the heart of Lagos. Inside, life glittered with power and wealth, but behind the shine lived cruelty. Chiamaka, the only daughter of the tycoon, carried herself like a queen born to command. Every step she took echoed arrogance. Every glance she gave was sharpened with pride. Servants bowed low as she passed, but she never once returned their respect. For Chiamaka, they were not people. They were shadows meant to serve her whims. Among the household staff stood Ifunanya, the newest maid. She was quiet, graceful, and carried herself with an unusual calmness that unsettled some of the older servants. She did her work without complaint, scrubbing, sweeping, polishing, her hands never resting, her lips whispering silent prayers. But to Chiamaka, her presence was an opportunity for mockery. Whenever she entered a room, she searched for a mistake, real or imagined, to belittle the young maid. "Look at you," Chiamaka would sneer, her friends laughing at her side. "Do you even know how to carry a tray properly?" Her words struck like whips, but Ifunanya lowered her gaze and continued her duties. She never argued, never begged for kindness. Instead, she bore her suffering like a silent soldier, her eyes calm, her spirit unbroken. What no one else noticed was the depth in those eyes. They were not the eyes of a mere servant. They held a story unspoken, a secret too heavy for words. It was this quiet strength that made Chiamaka despise her even more. She could humiliate Ifunanya, yet the maid's dignity remained untouched, as though her soul lived above the cruelty. Chief Obinna sometimes watched from the grand staircase, his brow tightening as he saw his daughter's harshness, yet he said nothing, for now. Around the mansion, servants whispered about Chiamaka's arrogance and the maid's strange calm. And in the midst of glittering chandeliers and laughter that carried venom, Ifunanya endured, her presence like a flame hidden beneath ashes. To all, she was just a maid, but behind her silence, behind those calm eyes, lived secrets waiting for the right moment to break free. From the break of dawn until the stars ruled the sky, Ifunanya's hands never knew rest. She rose before the sun, scrubbing the marble floors until her knees ached, polishing the glass windows until her reflection blurred with sweat. When the wealthy guests of Chief Obinna dined, she served them with steady hands, though insults rained on her like arrows. Chiamaka found joy in pointing out the smallest faults, sneering at her in front of strangers. "Can't you do anything right?" she would shout, and the guests would chuckle, feeding off her arrogance. Ifunanya bore it all in silence. She bowed her head and carried on, refusing to let bitterness stain her soul. Every cruel word pierced her, but she did not answer back. She understood something the others did not. Dignity was not measured by wealth or position, but by how one carried pain. Her silence was not weakness. It was strength, wrapped in patience. At night, when the mansion grew quiet, Ifunanya retreated to the small servants' quarters. She lit a candle and knelt beside her bed, whispering prayers into the still air. She prayed not for revenge, but for strength. She asked for courage to keep enduring, for light to guide her path through the darkness of cruelty. Her tears sometimes fell onto her folded hands, but even in sorrow, her spirit refused to break. The other servants often wondered how she survived such humiliation without lashing out. They saw her scrubbing with blistered hands, carrying trays with trembling arms, standing for hours while insults poured over her. Yet each morning, she returned to her duties with the same calm, her eyes steady, her lips sealed, but deep inside, beneath the quiet and the prayers, burned a fire no one could see. It was the fire of dignity, the flame of someone who knew her worth even when others could not. She carried pain in her body, but her heart carried something greater, an unshakable strength that no humiliation could destroy. And though the world saw only a servant, Ifunanya's silence was a shield, guarding a secret life that was waiting for its time to rise. The mansion glittered that evening with music, laughter, and the clinking of wine glasses. Chief Obinna had invited some of Lagos's most influential families for a grand dinner. The table stretched wide, filled with delicacies, shining silverware, and golden chandeliers that cast a royal glow across the hall. Guests arrived in expensive gowns and tailored suits, their voices dripping with pride and gossip. At the center of it all sat Chiamaka, glowing with arrogance, eager to show off her father's wealth and her own power. Ifunanya moved quietly among them, carrying trays of food and pouring drinks. Her face remained calm, but her heart raced with each step. The weight of their eyes, their whispers, and her mistress's sharp tongue pressed against her like stones. She had survived many humiliations in silence, but tonight, cruelty was about to reach its peak. As she served a platter of roasted meat, her hand trembled slightly. The plate slipped from her grasp and shattered on the polished marble floor. The entire hall went silent for a moment. Then laughter exploded like firecrackers. Chiamaka's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "On your knees," she commanded, her voice echoing across the hall. "Pick it up like the useless girl you are." Ifunanya bent down slowly, gathering the broken pieces with shaking hands. The sharp edges cut her fingers, but she did not cry. Around her, the guests laughed, their jeweled necklaces shaking with amusement, their words dripping mockery. Some even clapped, entertained by the humiliation. But while the laughter rang loud, Chief Obinna's face hardened. He watched silently, his chest tightening as he saw his daughter's cruelty displayed so boldly before strangers. His eyes flickered toward Ifunanya, who bore her shame with quiet dignity. She did not beg, she did not weep. She simply gathered the pieces, her calm eyes reflecting strength that no humiliation could erase. In that moment, a seed of doubt and unease was planted deep within Chief Obinna's heart. He could not explain it yet, but he felt something that made him look at Ifunanya differently. That night, after the guests had gone and silence returned to the mansion, Chief Obinna sat alone in his study. The echoes of laughter from the dinner party still lingered in his mind, but it was not the noise of the guests that troubled him. It was the image of Ifunanya kneeling on the marble floor, her calm face bent over the broken plate. Something about her features, the curve of her jaw, the softness in her eyes had struck him like a memory long buried. For the first time, he studied her closely in his mind. The shape of her face, the way she held herself with quiet dignity, it reminded him so much of his late wife, Adaiz. His heart clenched at the thought. Adaiz had passed many years ago, leaving him with only one daughter, Chiamaka. But long before that tragedy, there was another wound, one he had carried in silence, the kidnapping of his infant child. It had been years ago, in the chaos of the city, when his newborn daughter disappeared without a trace. Despite his wealth and power, despite every search and every effort, she was never found. The case faded with time, but the ache never left him. People said he should let it go, that fate had spoken. But Chief Obinna never forgot. He often wondered where she was, if she was alive, if she had grown into a young woman somewhere far from his world. Now, as he thought of Ifunanya, the resemblance was too sharp to ignore. The birthmark on her cheekbone, faint but visible, looked just like the one that ran in a Daisy's family. The way her eyes glistened when she was silent, it was a reflection he had seen before. His heart beat heavy with suspicion. Could it be? Was fate cruel enough to place his lost child in his own mansion, under the cruel hand of Chiamaka? He said nothing, but doubt and curiosity gnawed at his soul. Chief Obinna leaned back in his chair, whispering to himself, "There is more to that girl than meets the eye." The night was heavy with silence, the kind that wraps itself around the walls of a mansion after everyone has gone to sleep. Ifunanya moved quietly through the corridors, carrying a basket of linens. Her footsteps were soft against the marble, but her tired body begged for rest. As she passed a long hallway she rarely entered, her eyes caught a door left slightly ajar. Curiosity pulled her closer. She pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was dim, smelling of dust and memories. Covered furniture stood like forgotten statues, draped in white sheets. At the far end of the room, a large canvas leaned against the wall, veiled by a heavy cloth. Something inside her stirred, urging her to uncover it. With trembling hands, she pulled the cloth away, and there before her was a portrait. The painting was of a woman regal and graceful, her beauty timeless. It was Madame Adaize Obinna, the late wife of Chief Obinna. The woman's soft eyes, the curve of her lips, even the tilt of her chin, it was as if Ifunanya were staring at her own reflection in an aged mirror. Her breath caught and tears filled her eyes. She reached out, her fingers brushing the painted face, her heart pounding with questions she could not name. Why did she look so much like this woman? Why did her reflection seem to live inside this portrait? Memories she never had tugged at her spirit, as if some hidden truth had been buried in her blood. Her heart whispered what her mind feared to say. There was a connection between her and this family, something greater than servitude. She sank to her knees before the painting, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Who am I?" she whispered into the silence. The room gave no answer, but the weight of the truth pressed closer than ever. That night, Ifunanya left the secret room with more questions than before. Yet deep inside, she knew life was about to shift. A secret was stirring, and it would not remain hidden forever. The day had been long and merciless for Ifunanya. From sunrise, Chiamaka had piled task upon task, scrubbing the floors twice, polishing the silverware until her hands ached, serving guests with a smile that masked her weariness. Every mistake, no matter how small, brought harsh words and scorn. "You are useless," Chiamaka spat as Ifunanya stumbled while carrying a heavy tray. Laughter filled the room, sharp and cruel, piercing her like knives. Her body was trembling, her vision blurred, but still she pressed on. She refused to let them see her weakness, yet her strength had limits, and her tired heart could carry no more. As she bent to lift another tray, the world spun before her eyes. A sharp gasp escaped her lips before her knees gave way. She collapsed onto the polished floor, the tray clattering beside her. The hall fell silent. The servants froze, fear flashing in their eyes. But Chief Obinna leapt from his chair, his face dark with concern. He rushed forward, kneeling beside her fragile body. "Ifunanya!" he called, his voice breaking with urgency. He placed his hand on her shoulder, trying to steady her limp frame. It was then that he saw it, the faint but unmistakable birthmark resting on her left shoulder. His breath caught. His hands trembled as his eyes widened in disbelief. That mark, shaped like a tiny crescent, was the very same one his lost daughter bore. It was the mark he had kissed when she was a baby, the mark that haunted his memories after she was taken from him. For a moment, the room around him disappeared. All he saw was the fragile girl before him, the servant who bore not just a burden of cruelty, but also the undeniable sign of his blood. His heart thundered as realization struck like lightning. Could it be? Had fate returned what life once stole from him? As he lifted her gently into his arms, Chief Obinna knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary maid. She was more than she appeared, and the truth was now closer than ever. Chief Obinna could not sleep after that night. The image of the birthmark haunted him, filling his mind with restless questions. He had lived with doubt and loss for too many years, but this time his heart refused to let go. He needed proof. He needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Quietly, without telling anyone, not even Chiamaka, he made his decision. The next morning, while Ifunanya worked in the garden, Chief Obinna walked by with a calm face, though inside he was burning with urgency. As the wind brushed her hair, a few strands clung to her clothes. With a trembling hand, he carefully collected them, hiding them inside a folded paper. It felt strange, almost cruel to take from her without her knowledge, but the truth demanded it. He contacted a trusted doctor, one who had been with the family for years. "This must remain private," Chief Obinna said firmly as he handed over the sample. "No word of this to anyone." The doctor nodded, understanding the weight in his tone. A DNA test was ordered, and all that remained was the waiting. Those days stretched endlessly. Chief Obinna carried himself as usual, hosting meetings, reading reports, speaking with friends, but his thoughts never left Ifunanya. He studied her from a distance, noticing the way she bowed her head, the way her calm presence filled even the darkest corners of the mansion. Every gesture, every glance reminded him more of Adayesi, his late wife. Finally, the envelope arrived. His hands shook as he broke the seal. His eyes scanned the paper, his breath catching at the words. Positive. The result was undeniable. Ifunanya was his daughter. The child stolen from him years ago, the child he thought lost forever, was here, alive, working as a maid in his own home. Tears filled his eyes as the truth sank in. Shock, relief, and joy crashed into him at once. His heart whispered what the paper confirmed. The lost heiress of the Obinna mansion had been found. Word count, 365. The mansion was alive with celebration that evening. Chief Obinna had invited relatives, business partners, and close friends for what seemed to be a grand family gathering. The air was filled with music, clinking glasses, and the aroma of rich delicacy. Chiamaka sparkled in her expensive gown, smiling proudly as she basked in the attention of the guests. Ifunanya, as always, moved quietly between tables, serving with steady hands and bowed eyes. To everyone else, it was just another night of wealth and laughter, but Chief Obinna knew it would be the night that changed everything. When the time came for him to address the gathering, he rose slowly, his tall frame commanding silence. The music stopped, the chatter faded, and all eyes turned toward him. His voice was calm, but there was a weight in it that made even the boldest guests sit straighter. "Tonight," he began, "I will speak not of business, but of family. Tonight, a truth hidden for years must finally be revealed." Whispers spread across the room. Chiamaka tilted her head, confused but curious. Chief Obinna gestured, and Ifunanya was brought forward. She stood hesitantly before the crowd, her heart pounding. "This young woman you see before you," Chief Obinna continued, his voice trembling with emotion, "is not merely a servant in my house. She is blood of my blood, my lost daughter." The words struck like thunder. Gasps filled the room, followed by stunned silence. Some clutched their pearls, others covered their mouths. Chiamaka froze, her painted smile collapsing into disbelief. "Father, what are you saying?" she stammered, her voice shaking. Obinna lifted the DNA results high for all to see. "The truth is undeniable. Years ago, my child was stolen from me. Today, she stands here, alive. Her name is Ifunanya, and she is the rightful heiress of this family." The hall erupted in chaos, shock, murmurs, accusations, but all Chiamaka could do was stare at her sister, her arrogance melting into fear. For the first time, she realized her throne was slipping away. The mansion that once echoed with Chiamaka's commands now felt colder than ever. The revelation of the truth had shaken every wall, and the servants who once bowed to her out of fear no longer looked at her the same way. Where once they scrambled to obey her orders, Now they turned their backs, their silence speaking louder than any words. The arrogance that once made her untouchable had become her downfall, and she felt the sting of loneliness for the first time in her life. She walked through the corridors, her heels clicking against the marble, but no one rushed to greet her. In the kitchen, the maids whispered, their eyes filled with quiet satisfaction. In the garden, the gardeners continued their work without acknowledging her presence. The respect she had demanded through fear had dissolved, leaving her with nothing but the bitter taste of her own cruelty. Chiamaka tried to reach out to her father, but Chief Obinna no longer looked at her with pride. His eyes were heavy with disappointment, his silence a punishment greater than any word. She turned to her friends, but they too had vanished, unwilling to be tied to her shame. Her world, built on arrogance, was crumbling piece by piece. In the midst of her shame, Ifunanya stepped forward, not with revenge but with grace. She did not mock her sister, nor did she take joy in her fall. Instead, she addressed the household with calm strength. Dignity, she said softly, her voice carrying through the halls, is not found in riches or titles. It is found in humility, in the way we treat one another. Her words struck the hearts of everyone present. The servants, once broken by Chiamaka's cruelty, now stood taller, their spirits lifted by Ifunanya's kindness. Even Chiamaka, standing with tears burning in her eyes, could not deny the truth. For the first time, she lowered her head, not in pride, but in shame. And in that moment, the roles had shifted completely. The one she had mocked as a servant now stood as her sister, her equal, and her better. The mansion that once felt heavy with arrogance slowly began to breathe again. With the truth revealed, Ifunanya was welcomed not as a servant, but as the rightful daughter of Chief Obinna. The halls that once echoed with her silent footsteps now carried her presence with honor. No longer did she bend under the weight of trays and insults. She walked with dignity, her head held high, her spirit shining like the morning sun. Chief Obinna stood proudly by her side, introducing her to relatives and business partners as his true heir. For the first time in years, joy returned to his face. The servants who once pitied Ifunanya now looked to her with admiration. She did not meet their respect with pride, but with warmth. She greeted them by name, thanked them for their work, and treated each one with the kindness she had longed for when she was in their place. Under her influence, the household began to change. The cruelty that had once hung like a shadow was replaced with respect. Meals were shared with laughter, tasks were done with cooperation, and every servant felt like a part of something greater than just duty. Ifunanya made sure that no one in the mansion felt less than human, no matter their position. Chiamaka, though still struggling with shame, could not escape the lesson her sister's rise had brought. She watched as Ifunanya led with humility, realizing that true power was not in commanding others, but in lifting them up. Slowly, even her hardened heart began to soften, though the scars of her arrogance remained. One evening, as the family and servants gathered in the great hall, Ifunanya stood before them all. Her voice was gentle but firm, her words carrying the weight of her journey. "The one you look down upon today," she said, her eyes sweeping across the room, "may be the one you bow before tomorrow." The hall fell into a deep silence, her words sinking into every heart. And in that moment, the mansion was no longer just a house of wealth. It was a home of dignity, respect, and new beginnings.